And now I want to introduce the speaker for tonight, Paul V. from Rio Grande.
Oh, God, have birthday night. I'm going to get to eat cake. That's all I need, right? After a nice Easter dinner. My name is Paul, and I'm an alcoholic. And I just may be having to make an amend here after the meeting. I'm not sure if Dan K is part of the wreckage of my past. I'll talk to him after the meeting. My sponsor told me whenever I speak that in front of a group that I should, dress appropriately, and I didn't put a tie on tonight, and he's miles away, so I don't have to worry about him. And my wife still worries a lot about my socks matching, and we're okay in that department. And I have a mother that still worries about clean underwear, and so all those things are taken care of. So. It's an honor and a privilege to speak and share part of my story with people that are trying to get sober or that are living a day at a time through a program in AA. I really feel the most comfortable in institutions. I go to the prison a lot and to the county jails, and do a lot of meeting after the meetings in coffee shops. So I didn't realize until Dave J. came up to me and asked me if I was nervous. If I was nervous, I really haven't given it any thought, so I might be a little nervous. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little historical background. I was born in Chinatown, in downtown Los Angeles, in the French hospital, and then raised in the neighborhood near Echo Park, where there were a lot of Filipinos, and I attributed that to my identity crisis for years and years until I got here. I came from a family of alcoholics. My father was a bartender. He was a good bartender, whatever that is. I know what I remember of him. He used to sleep all day, usually in the clothes that he worked in, because he'd come home drunk, and it was usually a tuxedo because he worked in these real fancy joints in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills and in some of the studios. So those are the memories that I have of my father. When I was about 7 years old, he had a stroke, and he never walked again. And 4 years later at home, he went crazy, and he spent the rest of his life in Camarillo. Now, I didn't realize until after I got sober that his death and what happened to him was a direct result of his alcoholism. So it was kind of an eye-opener to me when I found that out when I got sober. Anyway, having had that childhood experience and being the youngest in the family, I always looked up to older people, and I became a street kid, and I won't get too much into that, but I lived in an area where it was essential that you belong to one group or another, and they were usually gangs. And I can remember that you had to drink like a man, fight like a man, talk like a man, and walk like a duck, And everybody walked like ducks, and I think I was still walking like a duck when I got here. And occasionally I still walk like a duck, Old ideas are kind of hard to get out of, I managed to be one of those people that, although there was a lot of things happening in the streets, I became streetwise and all that, but I became bored with how people hung out in the neighborhood, and I became bored with the violence, and I became bored with that stuff. So I always searched out people that were maybe in spirit about as wild as I was, because those real bad dudes in the streets didn't want anything to do with me, because when I would get drunk or loaded, I was real unpredictable, and in spite of walking like a duck, people that are members of street gangs are very conservative. They have a pecking order, and I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't behave, I'd step out of line, or I'd shoot my mouth out of line, or whatever. Incidentally, for some of the old timers and some of your real new people here, I came here duly addicted, going on 6 years ago. So if you hear me talk a little bit about drugs, that's part of my story. Eventually, like I said, I managed to become a survivor, and one of the tools that I used was the ability to be something or play the part of somebody that I wasn't, And being in the downtown area, I could be a lot of things, depending on what side of town I was on, or I could be a Greek, or I could be, something exotic from the Mediterranean, or I could be South American, I could be anything, that had to do with dark hair and dark eyes and stuff like that. So I learned how to play the part, And I can still remember going on the bus to a joint in Beverly Hills where a friend of mine was a waiter, and hanging out, but going there by bus, in a suit, being cool. And it was essential that in that kind of environment that I be cool, that you liked me, that you thought I was doing the in thing, that I was doing I guess now today the term is trendy, that I was doing the trendy thing, and I was wearing the right clothes, and that I used all the right slang, and I was just a real hip person, a guy that knew what was happening. And I went through life like that, thinking that's how I had to be in order to make it in life, And it was funny that I talk about making it in life, because I can't remember ever setting any goals for myself other than what am I going to do on Friday night. I mean, I never set any goals for myself. I never set any I never made any long-range plans. I mean, I couldn't even make a decision. If I was with a woman and they'd say, well, what do you want to do? I always come up with a brilliant, I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. And in looking back, it was obvious that I didn't know shit. I didn't know anything. But I thought I did. I thought I had all the answers to everything. I had all the answers to all the questions that were ever asked, and all you had to do was ask me, and I had an opinion on it, And it was another eye-opener to come to Alcoholics Anonymous and find out that I really didn't even know the questions. What was I dealing with the answers for? My drinking career went from early on from wino, brown bag wino on the street corners, and heavy drinking and all that puking stuff and all that, to a Mr. Cool gourmet wine drinker, at the Central Coast Wine Society up at the San Luis Bay Inn. So I was always upwardly mobile, in my drinking. And that's all part of playing the part, When I was 21, I quit bar drinking. I had started bar drinking when I was about 15 years old, and I remember I paid my tab, and I made a bet with the owner of the bar that he couldn't guess how old I was. And when I showed him my ID, my driver's license and all that, this guy just about had a heart attack, because I'd been sitting in there for 5 years, So, and it was like six nights a week, and my friends didn't even know where I would go, after hanging out. I guess every town or every neighborhood, it has a hangout where all the high school and after you get out of high school where you hang out and all that. But I would go in and check in with all my old friends and stuff like that. Then I would drift off about 10 or 11 o'clock at night and sit in the bars until they closed. When I quit hanging out in bars, I started doing the drinking on the freeways and in the cars and at home, and I decided to go back to school because I was having feelings then of less than, and I thought maybe if I had more education that I could amount to something. And so I went to school, and what I got out of school was a wife. I was 21 years old, and I'm coming from a good single-parent Mexican family where I learned right from wrong, and I don't have any tattoos, you know. I mean, I'm not a bad guy. I don't have any tattoos, but yet I was a scoundrel on the street. I couldn't be trusted, you know. I came home with a Chinese girl, you know, and my family really didn't take too kindly to that, you know. I mean, I was out in left field all the time anyway. I always did the thing that was unpredictable, and here I come home, a good Catholic boy with a Chinese girl, and announce that I'm going to get married, you know. And we like to have big parties and big weddings. Although I come from an immediate small family, I have thousands of cousins, you know, and they were all disappointed when I ran off to Las Vegas with all my drunken friends and got married there and had a reception in the club car on the train on the way back, you know. That was my idea of a good party, you know. It was safe, you know. I thought it was rational. Nobody could get caught for drunk driving, and we about tore that train apart on the way back. And my poor wife, my bride at the time, didn't know what to make of all this. She'd never seen these people that were invited to the wedding. She didn't know who in the hell they were, you know. Anyway, that launched my drinking career and my compulsive obsessive behavior in other areas into being a periodic, and I got locked into being an overachiever. That I felt like I had to succeed in the business that I was in, so I would I would get really good jobs and work my way up to whatever, I guess it's middle management or whatever, and if things didn't go my way, I'd leave, you know, and then I'd drink over stuff like that, you know, like, don't they know who they have here? They have a screaming genius on their hands, and they're not even, you know, tapping that whole source of all the vital information to the known universe, you know. So I would leave. I would find another job, and it was not uncommon for me to walk off a job, just flip out the back, go to lunch and never come back, you know, just disappear. And I thought that was really cool because I knew that I was good enough in the type of work that I was doing, which incidentally Dan used to do. And matter of fact, Dan and I worked together. I don't know. I don't think I was too kind to him when I got here on the Central Coast. I'll get to that later. Might be in a form of a ninth step. Anyway, I was always able to find jobs, and the only thing that I identified with wholly was my ability to get up and go to work and be a provider, and nothing more. And nothing more. So that affected my ability to interact in a relationship with my wife at the time. It was a nice lady, and as a matter of fact, we're still friends today. She was a creative person, and the only thing I could identify with was what my job was, and that was the number one thing. That was the most important thing. That was the number one priority. You know, can't you see how hard I work? Can't you see, you know, everything that I've done, all the stuff that I bring home for you? You don't have to do anything, you know. And I thought that was the main purpose of my being here on this earth, just to be a good provider and to tell this woman day in and day out, you know, how good I was for her. You know? And she'd go, yeah, sure. You know, after a while, she learned how to feel that stuff. She probably would have been above and beyond a black belt, Al-Anon. I later learned, you know, because she was really slick after 11 years. She was a survivor. I would do things like another thing, that aspect of my drinking, incidentally, which started when I was about 12, was that I was emotionally immature. I know that none of you guys can identify with that. Stomping up and down and raising hell and being mad and not knowing why, you know. I was always mad at something, you know, but it wasn't you. I'm just mad, you know. The poor lady, I used to come home drunk on my ass on payday, about 4 in the morning. I get paid at 4 in the afternoon, and I'd be rolling in about 4 in the morning, and all the money would be gone. I had spent it all. You know, so she learned to become very responsible, you know, when I wasn't out raising hell, you know. I would do stuff like knock on the door, in the front door, and run around the back, and knock on the back door, and when she'd be going to the back door, I'd run around the front, let myself in, and hide in the hallway, and scare the shit out of her and think it was funny, you know. She didn't take too kindly to that. After about 4 years of this nonsense, she developed ulcers. Bad ulcers. I mean, this lady was sick from, you know, not knowing what this nut that she was living with was going to do next. And thank God that we didn't have any children at the time, you know. She might have, you know, miscarried or something. I don't know. She might have died having a baby or something. I was, you know, because I was always driving around, you know, drunk or what have you. Anyway, I was one of those people, like today, Easter Sunday, would have been a prime example. Easter Sunday, what Easter Sunday meant to me was that was the day that I could resume all the resentments and all the bullshit I had given up for Lent, which usually meant punching somebody out that I didn't like at a family gathering, you know, or really making a fool out of myself, you know, or not showing up for the big dinner. That was always a good one, you know, or showing up with, again, a band of strangers, you know. That's what Easter meant to me. And I can remember the look on people's faces when I would pull this stuff, you know. And I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate to be a blackout drinker. You know, I had to live through all my stuff in vivid color and stereophonic sound. I mean, you know, I knew when I was in the middle of a situation that I had lost control, but there was something like I was being driven that I couldn't turn back. I couldn't stop that process of screwing up once I started. It was like, oh well, now that I've jumped off the bridge, I can't glide and fly up and save myself, so I might as well just go for it all the way. And that's what would happen. I would just go for it, you know. And it got me in a lot of trouble, you know, and it got me to where I said I'm sorry so much that people would see me coming, and before I could get the words out of my mouth, they would say, I know, you're going to say you're sorry, you know. And I often wonder if you know, I thought that I meant it, and I was sure that I meant it, but now today that I've been sober a while now, I don't know whether I really did or not. You know, did I really mean that I was sorry, you know, or anyway, it really doesn't make any difference, because I said it so often that it's hard for me to do that. It's easier for me to say I'm wrong today than to say I'm sorry, because I had beat that one to death, you know. After about 5 or 6 years of this marriage, I started to have a series of horrendous automobile accidents. One of which was on New Year's night, or New Year's morning of 1969. I hit a telephone pole head on, going about 50 or 60 miles an hour, and I was able to walk away from it. Not very good, but I walked away from it with a collapsed lung and a broken sternum and what have you. And I didn't know at the time, but I wasn't expected to live. After they had, when the LAPD gets a hold of you, they handle you like a piece of meat. They just throw you around, and they almost killed me. They almost finished me, you know. I looked okay, but I had a massive amount of the internal injuries. So I spent the next year convalescing. I switched from scotch to brandy, and I quit taking amphetamines, which I had been addicted to for over 10 years in massive amounts. And I started smoking pot because I wouldn't get in trouble. You know, I wouldn't wreck cars behind that stuff. You know, it's a funny thing about those particular drugs. My first wife thought that, like, about every year or so I was having a nervous breakdown from all the pressure at work. I left out some slight details about my nervous breakdowns. The details were that, and the truth was that I was doing about 60 or 70 pills a day. You know, and then that makes you psychotic, and that makes you come down hard, you know, and that makes you withdraw with all the symptoms of a nervous breakdown, and you see things, you know, crawling from the walls, and you withdraw real bad, and some people at times convulse, and I did almost all those things except convulse, but I could never tell her the truth, you know. I could never tell her I'm strung out. I used to hide it. You know, I used to hide it. I used to go in the garage and do stuff, you know, just like people do with their drinking. You know, I did that with drugs. And eventually, I reached a point where something was real wrong in this relationship, and I knew that it wasn't me. Of course, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. You know, I was full of denial. One night, I sat up in bed and I said, "There's something wrong here," because my wife started to take vacations by herself, and this has been going on. This has been going on for about 3 or 4 years. You know, and by this time we'd had a child, and you know, she'd go to Canada. She was seeing the world, you know, and I couldn't drag myself away from work. You know, I was too important. No, that's okay. You go. They need me. Anyway, on one of her trips, familiarizing herself with different parts of the world, I came to the realization that the relationship had reached a dead end, and the best thing to do was just to walk away like a gentleman and not create any havoc for the child. And it was probably one of the only real right things I had done in years, you know. So I was very careful, you know. I'd only smoke pot with my daughter if she was asleep in the car, and you know, and I wouldn't drink wine from the bottle. You know, I made sure I poured myself a glass, you know, and I was trying to, you know, a good image, you know, a father image for my daughter, you know, and but I was on a constant high, a constant buzz, and we did get a divorce, and I allowed her to probably realize her full potential and to be a creative person, and I went down the tubes. I bought myself a Porsche, and yeah, still playing the part. I was 30 some odd years old. I bought myself a Porsche. I restored it. I became Mr. Cool. I got myself one of those big Afro hairdos, you know, and I used to drive around going like that, you know. Had a bottle of wine between my legs all the time, and I was always going. I didn't know that at the time, but I was always going on mini geographics, which means that I didn't feel right about something where I was at, but I knew if I got to where at a certain destination, that things would be better. So I would do stuff like drive to San Diego during the summer, during the bullfight season, on a Friday night in heavy traffic, just to have dinner, and drive back. Because once I got there, I was with me, and nothing changed, you know. And the only thing that would make me feel better was to drink on top of that feeling, thinking that it might change my attitude, or that something would happen, you know, the lights would go on, or that all of a sudden, you know, I just felt that something would happen that would be different, and nothing ever did. You know, then I started to have a series of relationships, and I started doing a lot of those things that it talks about in the big book, especially in the 3rd chapter, about you know, taking a trip, not taking a trip, and I never drank on the job except for the Kahlua was just a sweetener for the coffee. You know, it didn't count. It was okay if I did drugs before work, you know, even though everybody could smell it when I got there. It was, I made a lot of exceptions for myself, you know, because I was not, I didn't have a problem, you know. I was just, I was being a liberated man. I was free for once, and I was single, and I was functioning, I thought, at a level that, you know, that just brought me the maximum amount of pleasure that everything that I did. The only thing is that I couldn't do anything sober. I couldn't do anything sober. I couldn't even take a shower sober. You know, I'd go get in a shower with a cold bottle of wine. You know, and I thought that was just the way to be. You know, that was cool. Eventually, I drank myself out of a relationship, and I got myself right into another one, and it lasted for a year, and I would drink myself out of that, and drink myself into another one, and I guess alcoholics have uncanny ability, you know, to attract, especially men, attract women that are going to save them. You know, they're going to take care of you, right? They're going to straighten you up, and I attracted a really nice lady that was going to straighten me out, you know, and what happened was she was the first one that told me that I acted like an alcoholic, and I naturally shrugged that off. I thought, you know, she was crazy, you know, and she shared with me the fact that her father had been an alcoholic, and that her father had abused her mother, and her father did all sorts of bizarre things, and that I reminded her of all that stuff, you know, and that I wasn't quite as bad as he was, but boy, we sure as hell looked like we came from the same neighborhood. And of course, I didn't know what she was talking about. That was above my head. I was so self-centered in giving it this stuff with my that I didn't know what the hell she was talking about, you know. And we managed to stay together and live together until one day I got real drunk and I kicked her poodle. I had to confess, I never liked that dog anyway. But I kicked her poodle, and I never hit a woman, but I kicked this poodle. And she thought I'd gone crazy, you know, abusing her little dog, you know. Went out anywhere, people would stare at, like, what's she doing with that slob, you know? I used to walk around with a big, like Alfred E. Newman, you know, a grin on my face. Anyway, over that incident, there's a page in the big book that refers to exactly how I reacted to that situation, and it's that occasionally alcohol would become an uncontrollable nuisance. That I had, even though I had not suffered delirium or been institutionalized or any of those things, I would become emotionally unstable. So in pleading my case with this lady to get her back and to come home and all that stuff, I did the next best thing that alcoholics that have the kind of brain in gear like I did at that time. I tried to punish myself. And what I did was I punched a telephone pole and broke my hand. Now, I work with my hands, right, Dan? Here I had to figure out how to get to work the next day with my hand like about this big, you know, and my hands were in pretty bad shape anyway, because somewhere along the line I had become a martial arts instructor, and so I was always hitting things and, you know, being involved in those kind of things. Anyway, I can't say that I'd never, but I went to work and told them that I'd done it there. And that was my first experience with playing out a scam or a lie right to the end, you see. And I know that none of you have ever done that, I'm sure. I later found out when I got sober that it was pretty common for alcoholics to get involved in scams and play them out to the end, you know, play them for all they're worth. And I did that, and for a year I had a hell of a time just regaining the use of the hand back to do what I do. And I'm not an MD. I'm a meat cutter. I used to go around telling people I was an MD, meat dealer, you know. You kind of shade the truth a little bit here, you know, you don't really, you know. Anyway, I swore that after that incident that I would never, I took a solemn oath, I used to joke around a lot about God, and I used to, like yell things out, like if there's a God, he'll come and fix this and stuff like that, and everything was like tongue-in-cheek, I didn't take anything seriously, because I knew that since a boy that God wasn't serious anyway, I mean, he never got my dad well, and when my mother told me that if I made that face and kept it that way, that it was going to stay like that forever, and if I mimicked people that had a handicap, that I would wind up with that. So I used to go around doing that stuff, and nothing ever happened. So I didn't believe in any kind of a higher power, because I'd never seen him in action, and it wasn't proven to me. So eventually, I found a lady. In other words, I had a problem with women. I was always looking for the right woman. I found a lady that was willing to go along with any nonsense that I could create, and she didn't seem to hassle me too much. She didn't mind if I drank. She smoked huge quantities of pot, and we got along really good. And we decided, I think it was 1977 or 70. There was a big rainstorm here on the Central Coast, and I got caught in it up in Big Sur. It was late summer, I remember, and we made it into San Luis Obispo just in time for happy hour, and we had a good time. And it was then that I made the decision to move to the Central Coast, during happy hour. That it'd be a good change, get out of the rat race, and move out of the big city. So in 1978. I did the next best thing that an alcoholic does. He quits his job, buys a house with no job, and moves. Just like that. So here I was, no job, and eventually it didn't take long, and I found a job, and I was off and running. The first thing that I found out about the Central Coast is that the soil is very fertile. So I became a pot farmer. I was going to supplement my income. I was going to pay this house off and build one, bigger and better than what I was living in. And, it was just a thing that was just exclusive to my friends that could come over. And I kind of built a fortress right in the middle of Arroyo Grande. I had 30-foot fence in the back, and people were wondering why in the hell it was like that. And I had spotlights, and I had dogs in the back. I was cool, You learn that stuff in the streets, when you're walking like a duck. You know how to cover your butt, And I thought that I really had it all together. Eventually, all the neighborhood kids just jumped over the fence and ripped me off, when I wasn't home. So to show you how cool I was. This lady that I was with, I'm forever grateful. She took a job, and on that job, she wound up in another relationship while we were still together, and it was the attention getter. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. And for the first time in my life, I experienced pain over something that I had no control over. I mean, I came home one day, and there was a strange guy moving all the furniture out of the house. And my natural reaction was to kill the son of a bitch. That was my natural state of handling things. I would have, I could have lowered the boom on this guy, and he wouldn't have known what happened. I could have made it look like an accident. I could have made him look like he fell. And something happened right then and there. I didn't react. For the first time in my life, I didn't react. And I just kind of sat there, and I watched all this stuff transpire. Everything, was kind of like I had become powerless over what was happening in the relationship that I was in, and I just kind of like let it go, although it didn't feel good. Didn't feel good at all. For the first time in my life, I was suffering emotionally. I was in pain. And I was willing to do anything to make things better. I was willing to do anything to stop her from doing what she was doing. And as a result of that, I got sober. And I'm here to tell you today that my initial thoughts for getting sober were for all the wrong reasons. Because nothing got put back together again. Nothing got put back together again at all. My life went off into one direction and hers went off into another, and I got sober. One day I was drinking and using, and the next day it was over with. Now, I seriously vacillated in between homicide and suicide, but there's another side of my brain that's that said, wait a minute, you better say goodbye to all your friends first. It's kind of like, wait a minute, I got something to tell you, And what I did was, before I even found AA, I called my mother up, the poor little old lady, and I said, look, I don't know what's going on here. I want to call to tell you that that you did the best you could with me. My life has gone to hell. I don't know what's wrong. I'm 37 years old, and obviously I haven't learned anything about living. And I can't stand what's happening now, and I can't stand what I've become. So I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and and don't feel bad if you don't see me again. And she just told me a couple of things, and we don't talk hardly at all. She said, "You're talking to the wrong person about this." And I said, "Oh yeah, who should I talk to?" I thought she was going to say a psychiatrist, a priest, or something like that. She said, "You ought to talk to God." And that night, for the first time since I was a boy, I got on my knees, and the only thing that I prayed for was for help. It was obvious to me during the period of that conversation and the time I got on my knees that I needed help, and that it really didn't matter whether there was a woman in my life or not. I needed help, because I was one of these people that you read about in the papers every day. I was too unpredictable. It was no big deal for me to hurt somebody. It was no big deal for me to hurt myself. And I was afraid, and I was terrified, So when we go through painful periods in our lives like that, and I didn't realize until after I'd gotten sober that pain is a touchstone for growth. However, the suffering is optional. That I didn't have to suffer all that long, But apparently the suffering was an old pattern of mine, and so I hurt for a long time. About probably a week or 2 or 3, I lost track of time. I went to detox in San Luis Obispo, and I spilled my guts. It was kind of like, here's my life story, and this is what I'm about, and I talked to this person, and told him everything, and then at the end of my telling my story, this person said, "You think you have a drinking problem?" See, I still didn't know that I didn't know. This person said, "Do you have a drinking problem?" I said, "Yeah, I might. I don't know. You think I do?" She said, So she made an appointment with me, and I talked to a person, I guess who's now the head of alcohol services in San Luis Obispo, who became my first unofficial sponsor. And when I talked to that man, he said to me, and here I told him that same story, I gave him the whole sob story, I've been wrong, this lady, and blah, blah, she ran off with some guy, and, in her running off with this guy, she was pregnant, and she'd had an abortion, which was like throwing salt on the wounds, and I wanted to kill them all, and and I just went on, and the guy looked at me and he said, "I'd like for you to go to an AA meeting." AA meeting? guy's crazy or what? AA meeting. So I did that. I went to an AA meeting, and my first AA meeting was on Stimson Street in Pismo, and I think maybe John might have been there. I'm not sure, but it was, I remember walking in, and it was dingy, and it was smoky, and the floor looked like it hadn't been swept in a month, and there were guys there that were really good coughers. I think Arnie, and some of you remember Okie Arnie, and I mean, and they said, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths, and the guy coughed for about 5 minutes. I said, oh my God, what did I get into? You know, and I mean, it was like nonstop coughing, and I thought I was going to catch what he had. You know, he had it long. Anyway, what happened was at that first meeting, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but when people were sharing around the table, and there weren't that many people there that night, I identified with each and every one of them, not so much in who and what I was and where I'd come from, but in the similarities of how they felt, and the similarities of how they put into words what I was feeling. They put it right into words, you know, and I remember my first 30 days, the only thing I could say was, I'm Paul and I hurt. You know, and I used to have a hell of a time saying I'm an alcoholic. I used to choke. I couldn't get it out, you know. But eventually it got easier. People would look at me and smile and say, keep coming back. Anyway, getting back to that first meeting, I went away from that, and there was something on, I remember they had a spotlight on the 12 steps, and on that spotlight, it seemed like some of the words off that chart jumped right off at me, you know, like that my life had become unmanageable, that came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, you know, and I never admitted that I was flipping out, that I was going off the deep end, you know. I never admitted that, and here I saw that. I read it on the wall, you know, and I identified with that. And the word God made me a little uncomfortable. You know, I was a little uncomfortable with that at first. And later on, it didn't take much time for me to surrender to a power greater than myself. I had, you know, during this period of early sobriety, real early sobriety, I had a lot of really good people that watched over me, and I'm sure that you have people like that here in your group that get a newcomer, and they take them home and they feed them, and they take them out for coffee, and you drag them to a meeting somewhere. And I didn't realize that these people were doing this for themselves, that they were doing 12-step work. And here I had all these people that cared for me and loved me. Man, I was just eating it up. I was flying high. I felt great. I remember my first speakers meeting. I went to Morro Bay to the Golden Tee, and I heard Eddie C. And I could have sworn that the whole time he was talking, he was looking right at me, and he was talking to me and about me. And he made an impression on me, you know. He made an impression on me because here's a guy that had been sober for years and years, and a lot of his attitude that was from the 40s or something like that, and a guy wore a zoot suit and all that stuff, I could identify with. You know, and here I thought I was so different. Here I thought I was so unique, you know, and I wasn't. I mean, my uniqueness nearly killed me. You know, and it nearly killed me. Along the way of, in my first year, I got involved in service. I secretaried a meeting for about 4 years, in different meetings, you know. They didn't tell me that these things were temporary. And I was able to attach myself to a group of guys up in Arroyo Grande. Maybe some of you have heard of the group. It's a stag group we have up there, and some of the fellows from Santa Maria come up to meetings up there, and it was probably the best thing I did, you know, because I used to think that I was too macho to do any of that stuff, but I was willing. I was willing. They said go to a men's meeting, and there was, again here, the people that are looking out for the newcomers would drag me to this meeting, and at times there were only, at that time that meeting was in Shell Beach, and there was only about 5 guys as part of that group. You know, and Bernie and Dave and some other people that aren't in this area anymore would drag me to this meeting, and eventually that meeting grew. And there's been a lot of experiences that I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous as far as growing experiences and learning how God expresses himself through a group conscience. You know, I've watched and seen it in action, and as a result of that, I've grown. You know, I've always been real careful to watch out what I pray for. I remember the first year of sobriety, and this lady had gone and all that, and finally I had surrendered, and I said, "Oh, the hell with her anyway." I took myself an apartment up in Shell Beach, right on the beach there on a cliff, and every night I used to go out and I'd pray on this cliff, you know, and I'd look out over the ocean, and I'd say, "Wow, you know, I'm a long ways from where I came from," because I had remembered all those experiences as a boy and all that stuff, and I'd remember them every day. I'm a long way from where I came from. I would have never dreamed that I was living in the manner that I was living, you know, and that I was experiencing some of the beauty in life itself, you know, and I could watch the sun set off the ocean during the different times of the year, you know, set in different parts of the ocean, and I was just in awe of all that stuff, and I became real evident that a power greater than myself, God as I choose to understand him, worked in my life without me really interfering. You know, every time I tried to force the fit, something would go wrong. If I tried to force the fit, you know, in a matter of something that I had prayed for, you know, it's like, you know, if I prayed for patience, I got a longer line at the grocery store, or, you know, and I hit every traffic light, you know, in Grand Avenue, or I got to drive around behind people that drove real slow, and in Arroyo Grande, somebody going 20 miles an hour. Filipinos, they drive real slow up there. Anyway, so I learned stuff about patience, you know, and I learned that I could be just a human being, that I could be myself, that I no longer had to have the, you know, the hairdo and the car and the clothes and all that stuff, and it really didn't matter where in the hell I was living, you know. By that time I had moved. It didn't matter whether I was living on in a pretty place and all that, because where I was really feeling at home and comfortable was inside. And that was the result of working the steps. You know, I took my 5th step with a guy that had hair all the way down to here, down to his rear end, and he wore big boots, and he drug his heels, and he had a big belt buckle, and he used to come all the way down from Cambria to go to that men's meeting, and sometimes he didn't have enough gas money to get home. And that impressed me. The guy was willing to go to any lengths, you know, and that kind of spirit I've kept with me, and I get to share a lot of this stuff at the men's camp out that we do twice a year, that I've been really proud to be a part of, you know, and it's something that just evolved, that happened. You know, I've been able to share with other people in AA some of the experiences that I have had in sobriety by being able to attend some of these. I go to a men's retreat, and I had the pleasure of sitting at just regular AA meetings with people like Chuck C. and sharing with him and you know, on a small scale, not, you know, at a big giant speakers meeting. And so I've been very, very lucky. I've had a lot of really nice people, including yourselves, that come into my life as a result of being sober. And I also realize that today, that everything that's happened to me up to this point is a part of bigger and better things to happen. You know, I know that I came to the Central Coast to get sober. I realize that now, and I'm grateful that I got here. If I hadn't come here, maybe I wouldn't be sober. I don't know. In the very near future, I'm going to be moving on. I had my sponsor, who spoke up here not too long ago at Intergroup, Santiago, a couple years ago told me that that I should do a goals inventory, and I didn't know what he was talking about because I had never set any goals for myself. So he explained to me what he meant, and I went ahead and did that about 2 years ago, and it was what it was just to write down what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and it didn't, and maybe even lay out a plan for footwork, and that's exactly what it was. It was a plan for footwork. It had nothing to do with projecting. It had nothing to do with predicting my future or anything. All it was a kind of like a map for footwork. And if I would have followed that the way I had written it, I'd have 3 more years to go. Footwork. And it goes to show you how things work in alcohol. Things don't happen. Things haven't happened in my life on my time. They've happened in God's time. Part of my alcoholism told me that I was less than, and that I was stupid, and that I really didn't deserve any better than what I'd gotten, and I even had those ideas in part of those ideas in sobriety, that I didn't deserve better. Just being sober was enough, and then it came a point to where just being sober was not enough. And so I thought a lot about a career switch. And at 43 years old, you just don't pack up your bags after you've been doing something for 26 years and do something else, especially with a 3-year-old at home. And as part of the footwork, I was chosen to start a pilot program for the state with the Department of Corrections, which will have me becoming a vocational instructor. I would have never dreamed of doing anything like that. A vocational instructor. I'm getting a teacher's credential tomorrow. I would have never dreamed that the stuff that I had done years ago was doing part of the footwork that's necessary for today. Remember way back in my story I said I went to college? Well, all that is applicable for me tomorrow, or for today. I thought that stuff was just wasted time. And that just points out to me that it's very clear that the plan of how I live my life and all that is none of my business. All I do is suit up and show up and do the footwork, and everything that is a result of that, or anything that comes from that, has already been decided. It's already been decided. Some of you might be thinking, well, he's talking way out here in left field, but that's the way I feel. And I know that none of this would have been possible without you people here in these rooms in Alcoholics Anonymous. I never really, like I said, I never really would have ever dreamed that these things would happen. And some of the things that I did, and I've been doing in sobriety, I hate that term, you can't knock success. I used to hate that, and that's when people do something over and over again, and it works, and they don't change it, and it's successful. I used to hate that, and what I've done was follow people that have been successful. I go to meetings. I've read the big book, and I read the big book. I talk with a lot of newcomers. I'm involved in one way or another with service. And it's all part of full circle. I didn't realize what the meaning of you can't keep what you have, and if you have to give it away, and then it also says that good things will come to pass if your house and if you're in the right place with God, and if you're right with God. And I felt for a long time that I've been right with God, and I got to be honest with you, I kind of wondered when good things would come to pass. Not that anything bad had happened, but I'm an alcoholic, I want to know when, how. I want all the details in triplicate, and I was beginning to wonder, and it was funny. I had completely forgotten about it, and then all of a sudden, all this stuff starts to happen in my life. And if I hadn't said anything tonight, if I've just shared that good things happen to you, not in your time and not in my time, but in God's time, then that's enough. You know, especially for people that are sober 3, 4, 5, 6 years. You know, there was a guy that used to say at Pismo, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, you know. And I quit doing what I was doing, and things stopped happening, you know. And there was Pat always used to tell me, Pat T up there, you're going to reap what you sow. So I've always been real careful not to reap anything that I'm not going to like the result of later on when it's sown, you know. And I'm just very grateful that you asked me to share tonight. Like I said, Easter is a very special time. Very briefly, I want to share with you that I belong to a group that meets once a year, and it's an AA group, and it's willing to go to any lengths. And we have an AA meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning in San Luis Obispo, and we've been doing it for 4 years. And this morning there must have been about 40 people there at the Alano Club for an AA meeting. And stuff like that in Alcoholics Anonymous, I love getting involved in. Anyway, I'd like to thank you again for asking me to speak, and I hope that you all have a nice Easter and a good life a day at a time. Thank you. We're up and down that after that incident that I would never, you know, I took a solemn oath, you know. I used to joke around a lot about God, and I used to, you know, like yell things out like if there's a God, you know, he'll come and fix this and stuff like that. And